let's talk about one of the biggest what-ifs in history, a decision that literally shaped the world we live in today. What if, when the world was on fire, America had decided to just sit this one out? Okay, let's jump into this alternate reality and see what happens. You have to understand, back in the 1930s and early 40s, this wasn't some fringe idea. This was a powerful mainstream belief. America was still reeling from the loss of over 116,000 soldiers in World War I, and everyone was struggling through the Great Depression. So this growing storm over in Europe, for a lot of people, it really did feel like someone else's problem. If that had happened, well, the world would be a place you wouldn't even recognize. That one single choice would have changed everything. And today, we're going to walk through that exact timeline. So to really get our heads around this, we first need to understand just how strong the forces of isolationism were in America at the time. What you're looking at here is basically a perfect storm of anti-war feeling. I mean, think about it. You've got the very real trauma of World War I still fresh in everyone's minds. Politically, the country had already rejected joining the League of Nations, and on top of all that, the economy was in absolute shambles at home. Groups like the America First Committee were huge, channeling all that anxiety into a massive political movement to keep America out of the war. And this number, this really puts it all into perspective: 25%. At its worst in 1933, 1 in 4 American workers was unemployed. When you're just trying to figure out how to put food on the table, a war happening thousands of miles away seems pretty abstract. So here is the absolute turning point in our what-if scenario: the Lend-Lease Act. In our history, it passed, turning the U.S. into the arsenal of democracy. But in this alternate timeline, the isolationists win. The act fails in Congress. And that one legislative defeat changes, well, everything. And the scale of what the Allies are about to lose is it's mind-boggling. We're talking $50.1 billion in aid. In today's money, that's over $690 billion. This wasn't just a little bit of help, it was their lifeline. And this chart shows you exactly who was holding on to that lifeline. Great Britain was by far the biggest recipient, with the Soviet Union not far behind. When you take all of this aid off the table, you're not just tipping the scales in a few battles, you are fundamentally rewriting the end of the war and starting a catastrophic chain reaction. So, without America's industrial machine backing them up, the Allied war effort begins to unravel with terrifying speed. The dominoes just fall so fast. Britain, totally broke and being starved by German U-boats, just can't hold out without American supplies. They're forced to make peace with Hitler. This frees up Germany to throw its entire military might against the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, in the Pacific, Japan faces zero American opposition, letting them carve out their empire completely unchecked. And the reason the Soviets collapse isn't just about manpower. It's about mechanics. It's about stuff. Without those hundreds of thousands of American trucks, the Red Army is basically stuck in the mud. Without American trains, their supply lines just fall apart. They don't even have enough high-quality fuel for their planes. The Red Army is essentially paralyzed. Stalin himself admitted after the war that Lend-Lease was crucial. Without it, the Eastern Front collapses, and with it, the last major resistance to Hitler in Europe is gone. So the war is over by the mid-1940s, but the world doesn't find peace. What it gets instead is a new dark age, completely shaped by the victorious Axis powers. Back in America, the story is just one of stagnation. That huge economic boom that was fueled by wartime production, it never happens. The Great Depression just sort of limps on for another decade. And all those incredible technological leaps we got from the war, I'm talking everything from radar to the very first computers, that progress stalls because the intense government-funded pressure cooker of wartime R&D never gets turned on. The whole social fabric of the country is different too. You see, the war was a major catalyst for change. Without it, the fight for civil rights gets delayed. That massive surge of women into the workforce doesn't happen. The baby boom never ignites. And instead of becoming this confident global superpower, America just turns inward, becoming an isolated and marginalized nation, basically watching history from the sidelines. So what about the New World Order? It's dominated by two victors, a Nazi-controlled Europe and an expansionist Japanese empire. And here's the thing, they don't trust each other one bit. So a new Cold War kicks off, but it's not between democracy and communism. It's between two brutal competing tyrannies. And in this world, the absolute, full, horrific scope of Nazi ideology is unleashed. With no one left to stop them, their most monstrous plans, like General Plan Ost, their blueprint for the ethnic cleansing of Eastern Europe through mass extermination and enslavement, are carried out completely. The human cost is it's almost impossible to comprehend.
So when we pull back from this incredibly dark timeline, it forces us to look at the actual historical choice to intervene in a totally new light.
This really is the heart of it. The decision for the US to enter the war wasn't simple, and it came with its own terrible costs, for sure. But this alternate history makes a powerful case that it was the decisive act, the one thing that prevented a global victory for tyranny and kept the possibility of a freer world alive. And that leaves us with this one fundamental question. This thought experiment shows a world where America chose to look away, and the price was a planet dominated by fascism. It forces us to ask, both then and now, what is the true cost of standing apart?